All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Named Ginny Thomas.
Acetaminophen, commonly known as Tylenol.
I come in with my Tylenol ready to go. My friends, we are on the air live for 2 glorious hours. Yes, I'm wearing my new credibility glasses. Thank you very much. Yeah, they're a little more glasses forward than some of the other stuff that I've worn. I don't know, kind of road testing them, to be honest. Not sure. I heard a whole thing, you know, how they sell eyeglasses. Kim, they do that thing where they go, I like these. They bring out with your hair and your skin complexion, your eyes. It all works together. So I signed on the dotted line, just got them delivered, and they're really big.
They are a little big.
I just feel like my nose should come off with the glasses when I take them off. They're like that size, you know.
They're nice, though. I like them.
I don't know. That's very sweet of you to say, but
girl, you just woo.
I feel like it does bring out the woo girl in me. Tony is here along with Kim.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, Tony. People love you, Tony. You can't fight it. I know. It's just one of your 30 jobs, but here the people love you. And of course, Kim, you heard
Kim,
from.
how are you?
She will chit us into next week. There is a big show ahead. I'll go through some of the Pam Bondi testimony. Pretty hot. On Capitol Hill, she comes loaded with smear for essentially every senator that's going to push on her. She's going to push back with a kind of smear that is designed specifically for that senator. She comes with almost a notebook of smear. And so you will find her not only evasive, but aggressive with the smear. That is the magic of the new America. You know, it's not enough that you're evasive. That's the old America. Well, Senator, I wish I could talk about that, but as you know, that's the old America. Mm-hmm. Now it's well, you've got a lot of nerve asking me that question when you took dark money from, and then they list the. Yep. So I'll give you some of that in a moment. I also wanted to recognize those who have rocked the website, the Get Mark merch website. Yeah. We had a bunch of orders, and these are all things, mugs, shirts, designed by my darling Courtney, born to peacefully resist. The t-shirt, the mugs. I just like the peacefully resist mug and t-shirt. For me, in its simplicity, it's wonderful. Again, it's at getmarkmerch.com. You can get the mug in black, in white, and of course you can get the shirts in all these different designs. But the shirt, maybe my favorite, but maybe it's too subtle, is I love that shirt. Yeah, peacefully resist is a 1984.5. You know, the reference to George Orwell, Project 1984.5. That T-shirt and that mug, I love, and a bunch of you have ordered that as well. So you must like it too. So I'm really gratified that, and again, that these designs that Courtney has done, you know, she works so hard on this stuff. They're being embraced by you, and apparently the product's pretty good too. That's what I'm getting, a lot of good feedback on everything. So getmarkmerch.com, and Courtney responds to everybody who orders. Imagine that, Kim. She responds to everyone who orders.
Yeah, that's
and
a lot.
And she jots them a line. Getmarkmerch.com. Thank you so much for supporting everything that we do on this show. We really appreciate it. We are a crowd-funded show. We try to bring you content and also extras. And so this is, again, sort of in the extra category. I have nothing to say today except that I forgot to take the garbage cans out, says Jim Slayton. Forgot to take them out last night, and I already left the house this morning. Wow, these are the kinds of indignities that you must suffer when you realize that you have, Yeah, I've been there. By the way, I will see that comment and raise it. And my bins were so full that I had to commission a private contractor to come get the trash. And they come with a huge truck, right? They're used to getting big things. All I have is, 2 recycling things and 2 garbage cans.
You couldn't have just waited for the next week to roll around?
Because the bins are full. What am I supposed to do? So I look into and so I said, well, how much is it? And the guy gave me some ridiculous number because he's got a whole truck. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I don't need the whole truck. I just need he said, we rent them by the whole truck, man. So I don't know what to do. But I'll tell you what I did. I said, hey, man, here's $80 cash. Just will you take them? And he did. So
wow.
That sometimes you got to make the deal on the side.
What?
I know, I'm sorry. It's a.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
I'm just saying it sometimes you got to get inventive about how you get it done. I feel you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Why am I seeing these in the lower right-hand part of the screen, Tony? Did somebody hit something? Yeah, thank you.
I did.
I also wanted to just recognize those quick into the chat. First ones into the chat this morning: Nellifidian, Rhonda, USA Patriot, Ricky O'Bear, Peter. Thank you for jumping on early and often. It's a great thing that we have such a supportive audience. So I wanted to
The
thank
Mark
you.
Thompson Show.
All right, everybody, let's jump on it. There is everybody's favorite attorney general answering questions on Capitol Hill. Then I will get into a little bit of what the likely plan is for this president. In fact, you know what, Tony? Let's go first with what is being discussed, which is the use of the Insurrection Act, a means by which the president can command the military into American cities and states. Here's a little bit of what is now arousing a lot of concern about its strategy moving forward.
With some federal agents and protesters clashing in Chicago and Portland, Oregon, President Trump now says he would consider invoking the Insurrection Act to send the military into those cities if the courts block his deployment of National Guard troops.
We have an Insurrection Act for a reason. I do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up.
That federal law that dates back to 1807 gives the president emergency powers to deploy the military to suppress what he deems as a rebellion or civil unrest. Illinois and its Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker is suing to block Trump's plan to send roughly 200 troops to Chicago, the governor calling it an unconstitutional invasion. But a federal judge has, at least for now, declined to stop that deployment.
What Donald Trump, I believe, is trying to do, incite it so they can bring more troops in, invoke the Insurrection Act, and militarize Chicago and other major cities.
The president has also attacked Portland as a burning hellhole that he claims has been overtaken by left-wing domestic terrorists.
Portland is on fire. Portland's been on fire for years.
Targeting the Democratic-led city a day after a federal judge, a Trump nominee, blocked him from sending National Guard troops there.
I think that's all insurrection. I really think that's really criminal insurrection.
Local authorities are forcefully pushing back, saying the chaos is confined to a single downtown city block.
In America, that we don't put the military on our streets unless it's extreme circumstances, like an invasion or rebellion. And those things, they just don't exist right now in Oregon.
Just last week, President Trump urged America's top generals to use some of those cities as training grounds for the U.S. military, and as a candidate flirted with invoking the Insurrection Act to suppress unrest. Some Republican leaders are already embracing the president's efforts. Overnight, Texas's Governor Greg Abbott posted this picture of National Guardsmen from his state heading off to other states like Oregon and Illinois to support the president's crackdown. If President Trump moves forward with the Insurrection Act, those National Guard would be granted the same law enforcement powers as local police. Craig?
Yeah, that I think really is a good umbrella piece, because it does give you right there at the end the reality that Some red state governors are on board with this. Yeah, let's go get them. We're sending our Texas National Guard over there. Now, that's not to say the National Guard troops to a person are on board with this. I mean, as we know, they are professionals. I mean, in careers, teachers, nurses, lawyers, doctors, and they are part-time military and available. Generally, they're sent into places that have been involved in some kind of natural disaster type thing. This is really an extraordinary perversion of what they're normally involved in. But that said, this is the new America, and there is, I think, a kind of roughing up of these blue cities, it would seem. And then, when you go in as bullies, which is really what's happening here, and there's pushback on the bullies, now you've got a situation that becomes more and more volatile, and that justifies, as was noted in that piece, the invoking of some kind of extraordinary executive power to bring in more military. So you started something, right? I mean, there's kind of an arson going on here, right? And then once the fire starts, it now permits you to do a bunch of things to put out the fire that you started. This was noted in some of the testimony today from Pam Bondi, because the legal framework for this is weak, right? I mean, it's very, very weak, and it will be played out at the highest court. But the courts are having trouble catching up with the speed of this administration in pursuing this policy. So today it was mentioned in the Dick Durbin testimony. Now, Durbin starts with questioning Bondi about the Qatar jet gift, the gift to the president of that $400 million plane that will then cost the taxpayers about $1 billion to bring up to security code, and then, of course, it'll be used for a few months, and then supposedly going to the Trump library. I think, personally, he'll continue to use it, but
plus
case,
whatever their security needs may be.
Thank you, exactly.
I mean, tack that on.
So you end up with this huge, gift from the country of Qatar. She was an attorney prior to her public service. She was an attorney representing Qatar, and that was noted early in the testimony. But what is noted here is that, and this is where he starts, this Qatari jet would have to be, before it's gifted to the president, it would have to get approval, essentially, from the ethics office and from the Justice Department. And then he segues into what we're talking about, which is the legal justification for moving troops into American cities. So this is Dick Durbin.
With anti-human trafficking. Obviously, in preparing any advice for the president on a jet or anything else, we consult with the Office of Legal Counsel. The confidentiality applies to their input as well. And Chairman, if you would approve and vote to approve, as Chairman Grassley said, Ranking Member, as Chairman Grassley said, my employees, we would answer your letters a lot faster, yet you're stalling them at every stop. And to go back to your previous question, your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
I believe cutting federal grant programs to law enforcement in my state and across the nation does not make us any safer, and you've done just that. You've supplanted that decision by sending in National Guard troops to California and other places. That is a situation where the governors have not asked for that help. If you truly wanted to do this on a bipartisan basis, you wouldn't defy a governor, you would work with them. I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work with this administration. But cutting these grants to law enforcement does not make us any stronger as a nation or give us the tools we need to reduce crime in Chicago. Now, I'd just like to ask you, when it came to this Cutter situation, did you consult with the ethics office in the Department of Justice before making your decision on this gift of a jet?
What's better after?
Yeah, so that's a bit of it. And in her response, go ahead, you can continue for a second.
Chairman, I didn't gift a jet to anyone. My Office of Legal Counsel provides confidential advice to the president, to the White House, period. And you're conflating two issues. Cutting grants. I was very clear about what grants we've cut and what grants we haven't. Only
you can
7%.
Stop here. What she basically says after that is, if I cut a grant or we cut a grant, come approach me and we'll see if we can restart that program that was cut. So that's kind of generally one of those empty promises, but be that as it may, what I wanted you to hear was the attack on your city, Chicago. You've got a murder rate that exceeds this, blah, 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 so we're sending in troops. I mean, the absurdity of that is, I think, demonstrable. When you put troops there, some areas may feel some safety as a result of the troops being there. But I'd say in general, you're beginning, and you saw it in some of the clips that were in the NBC piece, you begin to see how the public pushes back. Those are protesters around an ICE facility there in Chicago, and you move troops in. Now you've got a volatile situation that just became even more volatile. The other thing I thought was, and I'm up against the clock a little bit. I wanted to show you, is it the Caroline Levitt stuff, Kim? Yeah.
Good Caroline Levitt. What struck out to me with the Pam Bondi video is her saying at the end, we're going to help you whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not. We're helping you. Wait a minute. Yeah. And then Caroline Levitt, let's roll that video, Tony, if we have it. She says yesterday, she's asked about, well, why are we doing this if people don't want it? If the governors don't want it, what are you doing?
No, this is Ghislaine Maxwell. This is not, that's not Caroline Levitt.
Yeah.
The Caroline Levitt thing is embedded, isn't it? In one of those.
Yeah, she gets very snippy, Caroline. And it's another one of these, no, we're helping you. You should want our help. This is, this is good for you. Open wide and take your spoonful of medicine because this is going to make you feel better.
Here it is. Yeah. Tony's got it.
Courts allow you to ultimately send in the National Guard into Chicago and Portland. Do Democrats not have reason to be concerned that there are long-term plans by this administration to keep U.S. military or the National Guard in American cities, like what we're seeing here in Washington?
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? They should be concerned about this. They should be concerned about the fact that people in their cities right now are being gunned down every single night. And the president, all he's trying to do is fix it.
Yeah, there you go.
Why are you so worried? All he's trying to do is fix it.
I mean, they are also good at the aggression, respond with aggression. Civil war is what Trump wants. That way he'll be able to cancel the next election and stay in power beyond his term, says Sandy. Thank you for the comments. The comments are live for the 2 hours that we're on YouTube. And of course, you can leave comments after hours, and we'll always read your comments and digest them, respond to them if we can at times. I do want to touch on something else in the Bondi hearing, and that is corruption. To me, the corruption story, which would be a centerpiece in most administrations, kind of takes on a sideshow aspect in this administration because of what's being wrought in America's cities and the way in which this Insurrection Act is being talked about, the justification somehow, an invented chaos in these cities from Portland to Los Angeles to Chicago, and there are more on the list to justify somehow beating back that chaos with American troops. So that is all relevant and takes center stage. The corruption, the manifest, demonstrable corruption of this administration would normally get a ton of attention. Instead, as I say, it exists as sort of a sideshow because of all that I just mentioned. But you'll remember, Tom Homann, who's kind of the lead thug in terms of an immigration policy that is pursued with a wanton chaos where they're grabbing landscapers and restaurant chefs and people at a high school graduation and working a car wash. That guy who heads up that effort, he took $50,000 in a bag, a kava bag, one of those restaurant kava. It was in a bag. The FBI had heard, this is prior to him actually being in the administration, that he was selling contracts for the incoming administration to perhaps work within this structure that he was going to be in charge of, that immigration structure.
Yeah.
Right. So those contracts were for sale. When the FBI heard about this, they actually set up a sting. They said they were interested in contracts with the new administration, and they met with him, and they gave him $50,000 cash that he accepted, and he said, I'll see what I can do on these contracts. He took the money. With that background, we go to Capitol Hill just moments ago, where Sheldon Whitehouse asked Pam Bondi, who was evasive about everything, really answering almost no questions. He went after the $50,000. What happened to it? Here you go.
What became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI paid to Mr. Homann in a paper bag, evidently?
She looks at prepared notes right now. She's looking down. She'll read from prepared notes.
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homann was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
And that was not my question. My question was, what became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI delivered, evidently in a paper bag, to Mr. Homann?
Senator, I'd look at your facts.
What?
Are you saying that they did not deliver $50,000 in cash to Mr. Homann?
Senator, as recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homann was subjected to a full
Different
review
question.
by the FBI agents,
That's a
by
different
Department
question.
of Justice prosecutors. They found no evidence of wrongdoing.
That's a different question. What became of the $50,000? Did the FBI get it back?
Mr. Whitehouse, excuse me, Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to talk to the FBI.
The report to you, can't you answer this question?
Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to discuss this with Director Patel.
Did Homann keep the $50,000?
As Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation
never mind.
of Mr.
Never mind.
Homann
I can
was
see I'm not going to get a straight
full
answer from
review.
you.
Yeah, let's move on, but you get a sense then for the fact that, you know, they're looking the other way on what I think is like, that's old school bagman, literal bagman corruption.
Yeah.
So bravo for it being brought up. I believe, did Mazie Hirono also, I think, maybe mention it? Run a little bit of Hirono's stuff, if you would, Tony. Yeah.
Days
she talks
secured
about
an
how
indictment against James Comey.
about how the president
That
asked
social
for the
media
Comey
post
indictment.
behind me saying, what about Comey, was directed to Pam. Are you the Pam that the president was referring to?
I'm sure I was.
So it's very clear to me that when the president posts something like that, that he considers the DOJ to be his law firm and you his lawyer. And in fact, very shortly after the post to you, Comey gets indicted. Last year, President Trump's new border czar, now border czar, Tom Homan, was videotaped taking a bag with $50,000 in cash from undercover FBI agents after
love the graphic.
suggesting he could help with government contracts. Sounds like a bribe. 2 weeks ago, DOJ officials reportedly shut down the bribery investigation into Mr. Homan. Ms. Bondi, did you approve closing the Homan investigation, bribery investigation?
She goes back to her notes now.
Here's
And she'll read the
Wow.
same refrain paragraph that she read to White House. She reads the exact same one. Go ahead, Tony.
Senator Hirono, as I stated earlier, the Department of Justice and the FBI conducted a thorough review, and they found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing. You were also on video outside the White House protesting with a group called CASA, where Antifa members were. Does that mean you're a member of Antifa?
That's a classic
I simply
pivot.
asked the question as to whether or not you approve the shutting down of the investigation, Mr. Homann. I have to assume that you did because the FBI reports to you. But the American people would look at the situation where this person is taking a $50,000 in cash, no less, and you testified today that a thorough investigation was done. Now, I have to
very,
assume...
very good. I think you see a couple things there. First of all, you see the manifest corruption on display and the cover up and just basically ignoring it. I mean, this $50,000 taken in a bag from in a Cava restaurant bag. But I also think that the testimony pivot, you have to know, because that's the dance that's going to be done frequently, and you'll really see it with this crew. The pivot to attack. It's really Trumpian, and it's something of an evil genius move, right? When they come at you, you attack. It's a Roy Cohn move. So you were there, Senator, I'm really surprised at you because you were outside the White House protesting and there were Antifa members there. Now, A, you don't even know if that's true. B, Antifa members there? She's not part of Antifa. We know that. And she was part of a peaceful protest, if anything. But if you could, let's assume Antifa members were there at the protest. There's no connection between Hirono and those protests. But you see, that almost doesn't matter. Again, the facts don't matter. The attack matters. And so it's an effective way of sort of playing off the moment and killing off the rest of the time for the senator.
It's almost not worth asking questions anymore. They're not going to answer the questions in any truthful way at all. So might as well just use the time to bring out your, giant graphic boards and make the point to the American people.
I think that's exactly what it's become. I mean, precisely what you've just said. Before I get to our distinguished guest, who I will get to in just a second, I want to quickly touch on the fact that your favorite statue is back, everyone. It's there on the mall. It's the Epstein statue. The Epstein Trumps. I don't know how they got it back, but they did. The statue of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein has returned. It was plucked from the mall early, as you know, the original permitting allowing it to be there for 5 days in honor of Friendship Month, says the plaque. Then the two are there. We are showing it now if you're just listening. It's Epstein and Trump in sort of a celebratory joining of their hands with the Capitol framed in the background. It is, in the age of trolling, it is the ultimate troll. That is the statue. But I'll also say that Trump himself was asked about a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, given the fact that the Supreme Court just said, we're not going to hear her case again. And she's been convicted. She's serving 20 years in child sex trafficking crimes. We're not going to hear this case. Trump was asked if he will pardon her. He was asked by Caitlin Collins. And here was that exchange. He can't remember Maxwell. Barely can remember.
The Supreme Court is back in session. Yeah. They rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance at getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're open to?
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider. I don't know anything about it. So, but I'll speak. I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
I have to say this, and no one's going to like me for saying it, but he's kind of convincing. He's so good at lying that I believe him. I just don't. I know he's lying, but I'm going, man, that guy's good. He really is good. I'm sorry.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
The point is that everything he says, I somehow I have to remind myself that
I love Tesla.
Yeah, that he doesn't love Tesla. That's all I'm saying. So, all right.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Bravo, everybody. Thank you for being here. Do us a favor and smash the like button. It's kind of important in this weird world of YouTube and independent media that you smash the like button.
It with your iron
If
rod.
you reach a certain threshold of thumbs up, they'll serve your show to places that may not even know your show exists. So that's why we emphasize that. And please subscribe to the show and just help build the footprint of the show. So if you see something that you like, please share it on your social media, Facebook, wherever you are. And that helps the show as well. Again, I am road testing my new credibility glasses, and I hope that this is their first day out in public in a forum like this, so I hope that they're being well received. And I'm about to road test them with a distinguished guest, so everybody just behave. That's all I'm saying.
The Mark Thompson Show.
She is the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, which is a nonpartisan national legal organization promoting democracy and progress through litigation, engaging with regulatory strategies and policy education, research. She has her work cut out for her. That's right. From Democracy Forward, and they are democracyforward.org. We'll have a link to them under this conversation. Skye Perryman, everyone. Hello, Skye.
Hi. Should I put my credibility glasses on?
Oh, yours are better than mine. How dare you? How dare you come onto my show and right away you come over the top with better glasses?
Well, you can actually see the ring light, so you're set up better.
Oh,
so I'm going to go
thank
ahead
you.
and take mine off. But
Okay.
I like your glasses, Mark. It's good to see you.
I gave in to, I would have no glasses on, but I gave in to the fact that I can't read notes and stuff unless I have them on.
The
So,
glasses are helpful. They make things look
exactly.
better.
They
Yes.
make you see better,
Yes.
as it turns out. Hey, Skye Perryman, welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you. And wow, do you have your hands full? Tell me what your to-do list looks like, given these full frontal attacks on democracy.
Well, it's quite large, but we've got a great team at Democracy Forward. We've brought over 150 legal actions already, and we're only at about 250 days of this administration, and the list keeps getting longer. So right now, we're really hoping and in court to help make sure that the American people don't get penalized by the president during this shutdown. So that's a piece. And of course, we're after that Homann video too, and have filed suit, as you know, to get the video from the government. They've not responded as the law requires them to our Freedom of Information Act request. So
And that's a big part of what you. That's a big part of what you do, though. These FOIA requests and really leaning in on those requests.
That's one thing. I mean, this is an administration that's been uninterested in transparency. For an administration that likes to go on social media and go on all kinds of new media channels and act like they're being transparent, they're really not. And so we have found that getting into the courtroom has forced the administration to have to reveal what it's doing. So we file a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests. We litigate a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, but we also have been able to uncover what the administration's doing just in the basic lawsuits we file to protect people's rights.
What does a lawsuit to protect people's rights look like? Give us a sense of, you said you have a lot of legal action going, and you indeed, you have, almost 200 different legal cases apparently. Give me a sense and give us a sense of what those legal cases look like.
Absolutely. Well, one of them, and we have a range of them, but just one example, when the president decided at noon in the middle of a weekday that the next day he was going to cut off federal funding to every community and every program across the country, which would have put things like Meals on Wheels and Head Start and things that people rely on every day in this country that, by the way, a lot of communities that are seen as red communities, like where I grew up, rural communities, they rely on these services really to a greater extent than large cities, and blue communities. We went to court and we stopped the national funding freeze. Money is flowing to communities as they need it to. We stopped the president. We went to court when he withheld over $6 billion from public education budgets, which would have wrecked our school budgets in the school year. We had to take him to court to get them to release those funds. We went to court in the middle of the night in March when they were shuffling, alongside our friends at the ACLU, when they were shuffling men onto planes to remove them, to take them to El Salvador without ever even having asked them a question about whether they committed a crime, why were they in the United States, anything. So that's obviously suits to protect people's rights. We protect people's right to speak out. This administration has tried to intimidate and terrorize and punish groups like the American Bar Association, groups like community programs that are just speaking out about their own perspective. So we go to court on that too. So it's a range of things. And we want everybody to know, including all the folks that are hitting like and coming into this show, that there are lawyers that are going to work every single day to make sure that as much as we can, that the American people are protected.
Yeah, again, it's democracyforward.org, and we'll have a link to your site under this video. So as you look at these court cases, the way they're proceeding, as you suggest, these legal challenges that you have to face, that this administration is serving up by the hour, tell me how you game this out. Again, some of this stuff you'll be able to have an effect on, and some of it is exists independent of your ability to have any effect on it. So as you see the attack on American cities, as you see these attacks, as you suggest, on quote illegal immigrants, but it's sort of a gill net approach, and they grab everything out of the ocean of people, and they take those who may legitimately have run afoul of the law, along with what looks like the lion's share of people who are perfectly fine, have no criminal record or any kind of troubled history whatsoever. Game this out for me legally. I'm curious as to your perspective, because you are so deep in it.
Well, we do two things. One way we know what they're going to do, and we don't know everything. There are certain things that aren't on the bingo card. No one knew that the president was going to take office and appoint Elon Musk to come run roughshod over Washington. I mean, that nobody knew that. But they are very good at saying what they're going to do. Project 2025 lays it out. The president has now this week admitted that he's implementing Project 2025, the first time he's admitted it, but we've known it. We've known it since last year that this was the plan. So we can look at what they've said they're going to do. When the president says he's going to be a dictator, that he needs generals like Hitler had. I mean, these are quotes from the president. We take those very seriously, and we're able to get as prepared as possible. That's one piece. The other piece is, what do you do to affect change when you have a president and an administration that does seem clearly intent on governing in a way where they're not going to be held accountable, or they don't want to be held accountable to people. And we have met their shock and awe with the American people's version of shock and awe. So we want to make sure this administration understands. And by the way, they do, which is why Stephen Miller is out threatening judges that the president himself appointed. We want to make sure that they understand that when they take steps to undermine people's rights, when they put the military in cities, when they do things that are un-American and unconstitutional and harmful, that they will have to go to court to answer to the American people. The courts are ruling against this administration left and right. Truly, judges that the president himself appointed have ruled against him in so many cases. There have been about 500 cases in the last 250 days overall, and they're not going well for the president, which is why he's attacking lawyers, he's attacking judges. He doesn't want the American people to use the court, so he's making claims like the courts don't matter. But all of that is part of them trying to really cover up for the fact that they're losing so much in court. But then there are some areas where we've won big court orders, and the Supreme Court on its shadow docket has overturned some of the wins that we've had, at least practically speaking. They haven't said what the president's doing is lawful. They've not ruled on that, but without explanation, they're using their shadow docket. And there we've even found that you can find wins in that too, because the piece of this is really about people using their power to push back. That is the only thing that the last 250 days have shown, is that if you confront this head on, with all the tools that people have, using their voices, going to court, this administration does back down in some instances. And so we're going to be there to force them to back down. And then in instances where they're deeply committed, they seem deeply committed for some reason to having the military in the streets, we're going to be there alongside other lawyers. You've seen the state attorneys general doing a great job. We're going to be there to call them and to force them to have to justify over and over every day to the American people what they're doing, because this is an extremism that the vast majority of Americans reject.
In our last minute or two, I just want to ask you about that shadow docket to which you referred, because my understanding is that they can make a ruling with the shadow docket, but what the shadow docket allows them to do is go back on that ruling, first of all, and meaning they can fill it out and find a different way to rule. Also, they have to go on the record. Beyond the shadow docket, you don't have to go on the record, with any kind of explanation or even ownership at the Supreme Court level with the shadow docket decision. But now that they are back in session, there will have to be ownership. There will have to be detail and maybe even reversal of the shadow docket decision. Can you just put a point on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this Supreme Court has a legitimacy crisis. Justice Roberts, I mean, he's concerned about the legacy of the court and his own legacy. There is a major legitimacy crisis. Americans of all political backgrounds don't like the idea of a court, sitting up on benches without describing what they're ruling on, what their reasoning is, and just making decisions without any type of explanation. So that's why the shadow docket is so harmful. But you're correct. These shadow docket decisions don't last forever. The court either has to take the case on the merits, or the case will play out in the lower courts. In many instances, when we have a shadow docket decision, we're still vigorously litigating and pursuing these cases in the lower courts. And eventually those court orders will persist, or the Supreme Court will have to take it up, explain what they're doing, and you can see things shift. We know that the shadow docket is really frustrating for so many Americans that are getting hurt when they block the relief that we've been able to seek for them. But we also want people to understand it's actually not the end of the story here, that there will be, and every day we see that, you live to fight another day, and that there is more that can be done. And you'll see that in this merits term. I mean, the Supreme Court's going to have to put it right out there on birthright citizenship, so many things.
You're from Texas? Is that where you're from originally?
I am. Yeah.
How did you find your way to the light and so many Texans don't?
There are so many Texans that, Texas is a big place. People forget that, but you're talking about a state that's between 20 and 30 million people. So there are more people in Texas that believe in democracy, that believe in civil rights for all people than there are in total populations in many states across this country. So we're proud in Texas that the president from Texas signed the Voting Rights Act, that so many of the civil rights battles originated in Texas and were hard fought. And there's a lot of fighters in Texas. And
I love that. You're so right to remind me of that. LBJ and
Barbara Jordan, Ann Richards.
Sure, real heavy lifting.
Leon Jaworski. I mean, you want to get real into it. The Nuremberg trials, right? Yeah.
Sure, and the female leadership in Texas, really distinguished.
Sarah Weddington argued and won Roe v. Wade at the age of 26. Texas lawyer.
And last thing on Texas, just because I mentioned it. It was talked about as a purplish state for a while, and I think some of the recent headlines associated with Texas and Texas politics has sort of forced that kind of conversation into the background. But you're right, of course, that there is.
What has happened in Texas, and this is something everybody across the country should look at, is if people would have paid attention to what was happening in Texas, to the religious extremism in Texas, to the money in politics in Texas, to an extreme, very far right movement that is far beyond traditional conservatism. People would have paid attention to that several decades ago, as opposed to saying, well, that's just Texas. We wouldn't be in this place as a country. And so I think that the fight began there. It will continue there. And of course, we're going to do this work all across the country.
Well, one thing about you is that you encourage me, and I'm almost unencourageable. So somehow you do it, and I really applaud you and the organization. Again, democracyforward.org. There's a click through under this video. Congratulations on the cool glasses. You and I will rock our glasses.
Do it.
We'll rock our glasses to our next conversation. And I look forward to the next time. So thanks so much for being here, Skye.
Thanks.
All right. All of us. Skye Perryman, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
How great is she? She actually had me believing. It's great, And it's not she's not blowing sunshine. That's the real work they're doing there. And that's really exciting. So, again, very exciting. Yeah, woohoo. Thank you, Skye, says Mindy Lee. Bravo. David Cay Johnston joins us in about 10 minutes or so. We'll get into a little bit of what's happening from the perspective of the great Pulitzer Prize winner. I wanted to just follow up on a story that made a lot of news. And it's the burning of that home owned by the South Carolina judge. It really was pointed to as potential linkage to political violence.
Because the judge who owns this vacation home had been under threat.
And she was just out of the house for a short time. Her husband still was there. He had to leap out of the house. I think broke several bones as he leapt from a second floor window, as I recall. But anyway, she was walking the dog on the beach. She's 69 years old. So it was on some level presumed to be some kind of act of political violence and arson. But now investigators are saying that there is no evidence of arson. Law enforcement officials in the state say there's no evidence that the fire was the result of arson. At this time, anyway, the investigation is ongoing. And that's really all they've said. I mean, so it's worth, though, noting, because I don't want to ever seem as though, hey, man, I did the story about it being arson and, didn't do the story about it being not arson. And thanks to Tony, who brought that to class today, and thanks, Tony. Yeah, was very it's doing his little part. So appreciate that. I also will mention that the Epstiein vote that was to happen in the House, I will talk to David Cay Johnston about in just a few moments. As you know, David feels as though the Epstein case and the Epstein evidence is something that has to be kept in a prominent light as we go forward, because this administration and Trump himself, of course, wants nothing to do with any of that. Big news that the government is taking over another company, at least a part of it. The government, that's you and me, acquiring a 10% stake in a Canadian-based company that has mining claims in remote northwestern Alaska. The announcement made by the Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, $35.6 million investment in Trilogy Metals. It will support mining exploration in Alaska's Ambler Mining District. The announcement, of course, that the Pentagon is investing in Trilogy Metals, which Burgum is saying will help secure critical mineral supplies, is maybe you consider it a meh. I always think this is an interesting way in which this administration, particularly populated by GOP and sort of staunch right-wingers, seems to be leaning. When you're free marketeers, when you view government as bad, when you view government ownership of things as worse, it's odd that you're taking ownership. Now, that's not to say that, private-public partnerships can't work. They do. But I'm just saying this crew seems particularly inclined to make deals like this. And the thing you worry about always, just in general, is that once the government is vested in a company, that now the government puts its thumb on the scale of free markets. And so you begin to lose the free market. So that's the ongoing concern. Elon Musk's company took Chinese money, according to an investor and an insider at Elon Musk's SpaceX. In newly unsealed testimony, it's revealed it's the first time direct Chinese investment in the company has been disclosed. New questions about foreign ownership interests in one of America's most important military contractors. I mean, SpaceX is huge, and Elon Musk's companies are huge, Starlink, etc. SpaceX taking money directly from Chinese investors. The They obviously have Chinese investors, to be honest, said this SpaceX investor in the deposition last year, as I say. And the scope of the Chinese investment is just not here. But SpaceX keeping its full ownership structure a secret. It was previously reported that some Chinese investors had bought indirect stakes in SpaceX. They invest in middlemen funds and they own shares in the company as a result. But this new testimony describes direct investments, which suggests a closer relationship between Chinese investors and SpaceX.
So what does that mean for American agencies, NASA doing business with SpaceX? Are we really just doing business with China then?
You see the gray area for certain, right? I mean, they have snapped up sensitive government contracts. They're building spy satellites for the Pentagon. They're launching spacecraft for NASA. They, as I mentioned, have Starlink services that are being used by embassies, being used by troops on the ground. Musk's roughly 42% stake in the company is worth an estimated $168 billion. If he owned nothing else but SpaceX, he'd be one of the 10 richest people in the world. So this is a powerful person. The money's important because the money speaks to power. And so it's shrouded in secrecy. And then, as you say, might there be a conflict of interest? This we don't know. But the voters who are going to swing the Prop 50 battle in California. The fight is over what community? Anybody? There's one crew that everybody's trying to engage and win over. It's the state's sizable Latino community is the answer. So the messages about Prop 50, which is, of course, the proposition that will permit the redrawing of districts in California to sort of match the redistrict redraw in Texas and in other states. They're focusing their message on that crew, the pro-Prop 50 crew is. So anyway, apparently they're spots, and of course the messaging is around radio messaging, television messaging, direct mail, etc., internet. Abuses of power, corrupt politicians, and blaming corrupt politicians for California's affordability crisis. And those, so you have pro and con. In fact, I'll tell you something. And Tony, you work, in a part of your 17 jobs, you work a lot of radio. Yeah. And I feel like you've taken a lot of media. I've seen more no on 50 stuff and heard more no on 50 stuff than I've seen yes on 50 stuff. It's a really well-financed no on 50 push. Is that your sense also?
I think on certain places it's been no, but it's playing to an audience that would already, I think, vote no. And
yeah,
honestly,
you're saying
I think I've seen a
yeah.
lot of yes stuff too on TV and internet. So. Yeah. They're both spending a lot of money, which is always good for radio, and because when it comes to political advertising, they have to pay up front. They don't pay in 90 days.
Legacy media does love
everyone spend because then we make money.
It is true. No,
I got a flyer yesterday from the No on 50 people, specifically a Reverend Mac Shorty, which I thought was kind of funny. I'm like, who is this rapper? Reverend Mac Shorty is telling me that I could disenfranchise the vote of the people of color if I vote yes on 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Max Shorty's got his following.
I guess
but I think he's hit the wrong house with you. You're a yes on 50 person.
Yeah.
Latino voters will make up 23 to 25% of the Prop 50 electorate. 40% of that 23 to 25% is considered up for grabs. The most persuadable targets, they say here. Anybody? Of the Latino voters, 23 to 25% of the electorate, 40% are more up for grabs. Of that Latino community, the persuadable targets are younger Latino voters. Yes. Those who can still be influenced. They seem less likely to respond to traditional Latino persuasion efforts like Spanish language ads, and they are distrustful of politics and politicians more broadly. It's very interesting to me how the Latino community is changing And you see it playing out in the campaigns for Prop 50 and against Prop 50. So fascinating, I think. That's the situation in California. By the way, I'll mention also something else in California, and this is the shutdown. Burbank Airport. And this is a major hub.
That was crazy. Yeah.
It was shut down yesterday. Completely shut down.
What? Because there was no air traffic controllers.
No air traffic controllers. Absolutely wild. And of course, that just completely screws the system. You know, once you have a delay of that size, it's only going to ripple through the entire system. And that's exactly what happened. Just wild. That, again, the result of the shutdown. And the shutdown, remember, will force those air traffic controllers, military, et cetera, to show up to work. They're considered essential workers, but they're not going to be paid. They'll get back pay once the government reopens. But what's interesting to me is that now the Trump administration is threatening to not pay furloughed federal workers. The White House saying that furloughed federal workers won't necessarily get paid when the government eventually reopens. This is contrary to a law that Trump signed in 2019.
Don't they have to pay them? What do you mean?
That was the law.
So
the law
they're gonna
states that
force
all
people-
furloughed workers will be paid for the period of lapse in appropriations, or the government shutdown period, right? But one White House official, anonymously, saying there is some confusion about the statute. It was asked, does this cover all these furloughed employees automatically? The conventional wisdom, of course, is yes, it does. But the White House's view is no, it doesn't. So it's kind of a threat by the White House to make the government shutdown politically painful for Democrats.
I love how they say there's some confusion. There's not confusion.
Right. They know.
There's no confusion at all. We know what the rule is.
We're confused about exactly who gets paid. So we're just going to let it, and we'll let the courts decide. Meantime, yeah. And he was asked directly, the president was, if he thinks furloughed workers should receive back pay. And he said yesterday, it depends on who we're talking about. And the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy. So, for the most part, he said, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way, he said. The threats and the proposed discharge of as many as 750,000 federal workers, all the brainchild of Russell Vought, as you know, the director of management and budget. And did you see you can't run this because it's, David Cay Johnston's here. Okay. You can't run this. I'll just finish this thought. You can't run this because it's got that Don't Fear the Reaper music and will be demonetized. But there's like a trollish official video that's coming out of the White House in which they animate Russell Vought and Donald Trump, and the Don't Fear the Reaper music is playing, and, he's cutting there with the Reaper's scythe, the jobs, and getting rid of these jobs during the shutdown. And there's he's wearing dressed like the Reaper, Russell Vought, only it's Russell Vaught's face. It's really it's kind of eerie and scary, and also like just such a new way to consider government, which is typically an advocate for those who work tirelessly for government. But it's a sign that, their view is, hey, no, there's a new king, and we don't do things the old way. So, yeah, there it is. There's Trump. And thank you, Tony. Yeah, and they're playing Don't Fear the Reaper. There's J.D. Vance playing the drums, and Russell Vought, they say, is the Reaper. He wields the pen. Here comes the Reaper. Gonna tie your hands. I mean, and then they play the zombie animated stuff as though the workers in the government are zombies. This is all wild. Can't believe this was released officially. But I couldn't believe that the troll of Hakeem Jeffries and what's his name forgettable senator who runs the minority leader of the Senate. I couldn't believe that that they released that as well. The trolling is just on another level. All right, we continue. All right. Yeah, no, thank you. That's
the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Chuck Schumer, is that the word? That's who I'm thinking of. Thanks. I thought just by leaving it out there that Kim would come in and have the answer, but no, she just lets me sit out here on the limb and twist. That's the way it is. I'm telling you, it's not easy. It's not easy out here. It is my supreme pleasure every week to talk to a Pulitzer Prize winner, best-selling author. He is so studied and learned in the law, in tax code, in money, in power. He is now a professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, the co-founder of DC Report, the great David Cay Johnston, everyone. Hi, David.
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Wow.
The Grim Reaper video, it is astonishing. This was put up at official government website. It is an indication of how really sick these people are. This is not suggestive of someone who is a balanced, normal, able to function in the world person, and very self-revealing of what's going on with this administration, and the glee which Donald takes, in doing awful things. As Lord Acton said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and we're getting a clear dose of that. And the rest of the world is just laughing at us and going, what has happened to America? How can you go from having this eloquent man, Barack Obama, in the White House and replace him with this clown and his clown car of followers?
You're right also in that this celebration of trolling as though it's the new politics and we do it better. The cruelty. I mean, we've talked about the brutality and cruelty being a centerpiece of policy already, and you see it played out in every bit of messaging.
Yeah. Very, very troubling, and more troubling that millions of Americans still think that this is the greatest president ever.
It's a true cult of personality, and you talk about him as the greatest con man certainly of the modern age. I wanted to talk about the Insurrection Act, which is now coming out of the shadows and seems to be spoken of. Donald Trump talked about it in the Oval Office yesterday. Tony, I don't know if you have that still, but at some point I'd love to play it for David. But he's asked about, would you consider the Insurrection Act? And all of a sudden he's now become more conversant on it, so he must be talking about it with his advisors. And his effort to occupy American cities with troops is not only a real effort, but it seems to be already underway and looking for justification.
Well, underlying this is Article 1 of the Constitution, which is what I taught my law students at RIT today. And Article 1 has a provision about insurrection because the slave-holding states, all the states in the beginning had slaves, but the ones where it was an important economic matter, wanted to have authority and power and not be trammeled by the federal government if they needed to put down an insurrection. But the language in Article 1 of the Constitution, and the power here rests with Congress, not with the usurper in the White House, it says actual invasion or something so imminent that you have to act as if it's an actual invasion. And the example I gave my students was if suddenly the Mexican government put thousands of troops on the border at Tijuana, that would qualify for the actual invasion or imminent. But there's nothing going on that justifies this whatsoever. And people need to really stand up to this. They need to appreciate why we have the Posse Comitatus Act from the 1860s, that we may not use troops against American civilians. And hopefully some of our senior officers are going to respect their constitutional obligations, refuse to follow illegal orders. It's going to get them court-martialed, no question about it, or to resign. But if you're brave enough to die for the country, you ought to be brave enough to end your career for the country.
I mean, one general left after that Quantico orgy of weird masculine flex that went on with admirals and generals from all over the world. So that might be the beginning. But if you're a National Guard trooper, you probably pretty much have to go where they tell you to go, don't you, David?
Well, if you're an officer and you're given an order that's illegal, no, you're not supposed to follow that order. And we're seeing that very clearly now, without any question, that Donald Trump has no regard for the law. There have now been 3 boats that they bombed and killed everybody on board. The penalty for bringing drugs into the country is not the death penalty. And it would only be any penalty, prison time, would only be after you've been tried, convicted, and there's evidence against you. As a number of judge advocate generals have said quite eloquently on various outlets, there's a simple word to explain what Trump's done with these 3 boats. It's called murder. Donald is capable of doing anything like this, not personally. I mean, he's your typical bully, but through other people. And there's cell phone video, you've probably already aired it, of toddlers in diapers who are being zip tied behind their backs in Chicago.
Well, that was a remarkable thing. I'm glad you mentioned it because I did want to ask you about it. You had this again, I would suggest kind of this toxic masculine flex associated with military. There's been this sort of fetishization of big military stuff. So you had Black Hawk helicopters and troops sliding down from these Black Hawk helicopters, rappelling down into these Chicago areas and neighborhoods. And they used tear gas and other things that
they used tear gas on Chicago police. That's very clear that they used tear gas on Chicago police. And never mind the Fourth Amendment, being safe in your home from unreasonable search and seizure. They literally just busted doors down and tore apartments apart. I mean, this is not law enforcement. This is criminal behavior under the color of law enforcement.
And by the way, just to follow up on that, David, isn't that legally actionable for many of those residents who are involved in this?
Yes, and I'm surprised that there already haven't been lawsuits. There's going to be litigation over this, without question. There will be litigation over it. But so long as Congress goes along with this, so long as Speaker Johnson keeps saying, I didn't know that, or well, that's his discretion, and various other things, they're going to continue to do this. They're going to take California National Guard officers and send them to Oregon, even though a judge appointed by Donald Trump says you can't do that. This is a law. This is a lawless, pro-criminal, pro-pedophile administration. And I say pro-pedophile because he's been pardoning people who are pedophiles. And by the way, the Robert Morris, the Texas megachurch pastor whom Donald has embraced and said he's my spiritual advisor. He said that about a bunch of people, to be clear. He just got sentenced for raping a 12-year-old girl. And this happened years ago. But you know what the judge gave in Texas for raping a 12-year-old girl? He got a sentence of 6 months. 6 months. Now, I was in the courtroom. I looked for, I couldn't find a transcript or a detailed explanation right away. But, I imagine the judge was thinking, well, she's some sort of a temptress, the Lolita defense, which is ridiculous. I mean, if you're a 14-year-old boy, I'll buy that. If you're a 40-year-old man, I'm sorry, no, that's nonsense. But look at all of the criminals around Trump. Look at what Trump said about Ghislaine Maxwell, as if he hardly knew her and hasn't thought about her. Should he pardon her? This is a pro-criminal, as long as you're Donald's kind of criminal presidency, because Donald is a lifelong criminal, a white-collar crime family leader.
Well, even those who may populate some of this crew that's going into cities and assisting ICE with air quotes. I say that. I mean, these guys, they pull up in it's like a Toyota SUV. They have no official markings at all. This is video we showed yesterday. They're in a Chicago neighborhood. They're fully masked, but they look like guys who just got off the couch watching the Villanova game to, go bust some heads. It's very clannish, the whole thing.
And they do not behave like law enforcement officers who are taught how to grab people when they have to, how to bring them down. You don't slug people, for example. Very bad tactic that police officers in training are taught. You don't do that. You can end up with the busted up hand. And isn't it curious, by the way, with America First, that the videos keep showing Toyota vans rather than American vans?
That hadn't occurred to me. Show David the Oval Office moment, and everyone, just remind everyone that now the Insurrection Act is a little bit in play in Donald Trump's mind.
Consider invoking the Insurrection Act to send the military into those cities if the courts block his deployment of National Guard troops.
We have an Insurrection Act for a reason. I do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up.
That federal law that dates back to 1807 gives the president emergency powers to deploy the military to suppress what he deems as a rebellion or civil unrest. Illinois and its Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker is suing to block Trump's plan to send roughly 200 troops to Chicago, the governor calling it an unconstitutional invasion. But a federal judge has, at least for now, declined to stop that deployment.
What Donald Trump, I believe, is trying to do, incite it so they can bring more troops in, invoke the Insurrection Act, and militarize Chicago and other major cities.
That's exactly right, David. I think the Pritzker is 100% right on that.
He's spot on. And by the way, notice something else here. There's a lot of talk about Trump and Nazis. Let's not forget what happened at Tiananmen Square in China. When the Chinese wanted to put down the student rebellion in 1989, they brought in local troops from the area around Beijing who would not shoot their fellow citizens. So they pulled back and they brought in troops from north of China. Well, Trump is bringing Californians to Oregon and Texans to Illinois. This is right out of the communist playbook in Beijing. So, authoritarians are authoritarians. They can be right-wing, left-wing, doesn't matter. It's you will do what I say or else.
You alluded to Maxwell. Do you have that again, just to tee that up real quick? Because just yesterday, Donald Trump was asked about a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, and he seemed just kind of foggy on the whole Maxwell-Epstein thing. Here's a little bit of it.
The Supreme Court is back in session. They rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance at getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're open to?
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
Yeah.
I believe, Mark, that he was not up on the case, but not that he hasn't thought about it for a long time, et cetera. He hardly remembers.
He sent Todd Blanche down there to talk to her.
Right. But look at the most amazing part of this. Caitlin Collins says, well, she was convicted of child sex trafficking. And there's no revulsion. There's no pulling back. There's no, well, that would be, I don't know. Instead, it's pushing in that direction. And by the way, let's hope she gets a pardon. Because if she gets a pardon, she no longer has Fifth Amendment protection against self-incriminating statements. If she gets clemency, that is, she's released from prison, she can still invoke the Fifth Amendment. If he gives her a pardon, she loses her Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. Congress, if the Democrats have control of it, and that's looking like it's not certain anymore, in 2027 could jail her if she doesn't answer questions and truthfully say things.
You know, during the Bondi back and forth with Sheldon Whitehouse particularly, but with the Epstein case was brought up by a couple of others as well. But there was one exchange between Whitehouse and Bondi in which he was asking about the suspicious activity report that they oftentimes refer to when looking at Epstein money. Right. So, and Whitehouse started by saying, you know, when you came into office, you promised you would look into this. There were hundreds of suspicious activity reports. Some people would deduce from the fact that they are called suspicious activity reports that there might be suspicious activity, he said. And yet you seem to have looked at 0 of those suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein accounts. And Bondi said, you know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants. I believe I could be wrong. Correct me. Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions, and the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. You're grilling me on Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on. It was a very Roy Cohn move to go on the offensive like that, you know, David?
It's also a sign that they know that they're losing on releasing the files. They recognize that there's very strong public support for releasing the files. It includes a lot of people around MAGA. And let me point out, if the federal government shows up at your place tomorrow in LA and takes a bunch of stuff from you, they have to either return it or, if it's documents, give you back copies of everything. The photographs they took, the audio recordings. That means the estate of Jeffrey Epstein and his lawyers should have copies of photographs and videos. And this attack on Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse is a former prosecutor. He's as sober a politician as you're ever going to meet. He's thoughtful and he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's not going to be intimidated by, oh, we have a picture of you with so-and-so. There are a lot of people who will be. Sheldon Whitehouse is not one of them. He's got a serious spine. But it is indicative of their effort to try and cow people, make you afraid. It was really a message sent to other people. Don't you press us. We'll find some way to dirty you up. And by the way, the financial reports, I believe, is one of the biggest things they should be pushing, because it will go right to what our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, said the other day, foolishly, absolutely foolishly said. It tells you a lot about how unsophisticated he is, where he said, well, you know, I live right next door to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion, and went in there one day and there's this massage table. And I said, that's kind of strange. And he says, Epstein tells him, well, you know, it's the right kind of massage, wink, wink. And he goes, the guy had the best extortion racket going. My goodness, that should really come back to haunt the Trump administration. But keeping up the heat to get at this material is really, really crucial. Now, I may be wrong, Mark, but as of this moment, I firmly believe that if we get irrefutable evidence that Donald Trump is a child rapist, which I'm confident the evidence is going to show, he can't get out of that. He's got a second looming problem, and that is we're now flying blind on the economy. We weren't in a position to particularly trust the Bureau of Labor Statistics over time, because he fired a professional and tried to put in a guy who has a Nazi battleship photo, a huge one, behind his desk at the Heritage Foundation. He's now out. He's not going to be there, E.J. Antoine. But the lack of information on were there jobs created or lost in September. The best evidence we have is we actually lost jobs in September. Not a lot, 23,000, but we should have created 10 times that many jobs. And if you are the budget director of a big corporation, or the CEO or the chief financial officer of a big corporation, you've got to make decisions about, are we going to increase our capital expenditures? Are we going to manufacture more widgets? And you need this macroeconomic data in order to make those decisions thoughtfully. And so the economy finally is beginning to show some cracks. Trump knows this. They've got a proposal to take care of the soybean farmers and give them billions of our tax dollars because China's not buying. But what are they going to do next year? China's not coming back. China's buying all the soybeans it wants and needs from Brazil, and the Brazilians are expanding production as warranted. What are we going to do? They don't have any plan. They don't have a clue to what they're doing. They are pretty good at trying to be entertaining, even if it's in a very dark mood, as in Don't Fear the Grim Reaper.
I mean, that might carry the media moment, but what you're talking about is really the destruction of a market. I mean, China was our number one consumer of soybeans, and soybeans are the number one exportable agricultural product. And people just may not factor soybeans into their head because you don't don't talk about them much. You think about cattle and other stuff, but that soybean market going away is massive, and as you suggest correctly, it's not coming back. So there's going to have to, as usual, they talk first and ask questions later. Meaning, he made this statement and he decides on tariffs and he decides China's an enemy, and now American farmers are getting a check this year, but next year there is no plan. I think there's a real turning of the economy on its side, David, and I'm just wondering, what they can do. And I don't know how to stop that bleeding.
There's got to be a major correction at some point. The fact that we have all these furloughed workers who the law very clearly says will be paid after this is over, that's going to suppress consumption. The layoffs of a couple 100,000 workers that are now just taking hold, that's going to suppress consumption, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area, which has always been the most stable economy, at least since World War II, in the U.S. The lack of information in the market sooner or later is going to spark something. And I point out that most of the huge drops we've seen in the stock market occur in October. It's a very common month for this to happen. The market keeps going up despite apart from the lack of the jobs data, there's no evidence of, profits are just running through the roof across the board. And so,
I mean, it seems like AI and rich people are holding up the stock market, David.
Yes. There was a new report out last week that 50% of the consumption in this country, that is people spending money to buy things you consume, food, etc., 50% of the consumption is coming from 10% of the population.
There you go.
And so 90% of us are not doing well. It's just as plain and simple as that. It's become pretty clear that if you have a couple of kids, you got to be making close to $100,000 a year, unless you're in one of the very low-cost, cheap housing locations across the country, and there aren't a lot of those, to be okay. The new poverty measure, ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So people that have a job, they work, they don't have any savings, and they don't make enough to really make ends meet. For a married couple with 2 kids in most of the urban areas of America, where most of the population lives, it's about $85,000 to $90,000 you got to make to escape poverty, to have enough. And so the pressures here are tremendous. On the other hand, if you're Larry Ellison, he's doubled his fortune in a year, and he's now the richest man in the world. He owns 36% of Oracle, which of course only exists because you and I as taxpayers invested in Oracle, got it started 60 or so years ago.
And now Oracle's being granted these immense government contracts. I mean, alongside the ones that they've had prior, they have all of this data. They're going to get TikTok data because Ellison's taking over that and making a bid for Warner Brothers. So this is, again, in these mergers, you have a handful of people controlling all the information and now data that can be scraped from all of these different sources. It's concerning. That's for another day, but it's definitely concerning. Last thing I was going to say to you, just because you made me think of it when you were talking about those who, what it takes to raise children in this country, et cetera. Shutting down government like this, I was reading about all the women and men, but single mom, I think is what this article was featuring, who engaged childcare of some sort while they work for the government, can no longer afford the childcare because they're living check to check and the government's closed down. And so now they can't show up. These are essential government workers, but they can't show up because there's nobody to watch the kids. They can't afford the childcare. You see the ripple effect of these moves.
Yes, and childcare, of course, is a very badly paid job. So some of those childcare outfits are going to close because they're mostly very lightly capitalized. All of this is, however, done with the view very clear from the people in the Trump administration that they only see the world through the eyes of rich people. There are plenty of rich people who can look out at the world and understand exactly what's going on with people who are poor. Bill Gates articulates, for example, very well in this, and sometimes when it's relevant, so does Warren Buffett. But what did we see Treasury Secretary Besant say? Incredibly arrogant man who interrupts members of Congress, especially women. He said, well, if my mother-in-law didn't get her Social Security check, she just figured, well, something's wrong. It'll come next month. Yeah, because she's got a son-in-law who's a multi-billionaire. She doesn't need to worry if something's wrong. She can call him up and he'll make sure that groceries are delivered. The food banks are going to suffer for this. We're seeing food rotting in the fields all across the country. The raids that are taking place, by the way, I wish somebody, and maybe somebody is gathering the data. I just had someone who lives here in rural New York in a district represented by a Trumper, half an hour, 45 minutes from my home, say, we haven't had any raids in our congressional district. And I suspect these raids are selectively being employed against Democrats, districts represented by Democrats, because the abuse of power is at the core of this. Abusing power for the sake of abusing power. Or as I used to cynically say sometimes, what's the point in acquiring power if you can't at least abuse it now and then?
Well, the one thing I would say, leaving the raids aside, is they shut the spigot off of federal money right away. I mean, New York, $20 billion, forget about it. California, forget about the $2 billion, and so on. I mean, it's extraordinary how they've weaponized everything that they possibly could. I'm out of time with you. So grateful for that time, David. Look forward to next week. Thanks again.
See you then.
David Cay Johnston, everybody. Love it, love it, love it. Always so great.
Thompson Show.
It is great to talk to David. I encourage questions, comments for David. I'll push them along for next week. Kim, I'm going to turn this show over to you.
That's what you think.
My big, heavy credibility glasses will go on hiatus until tomorrow.
All right.
Left behind a cool conversation I had with Abel, who the name might not mean anything to you, but it will if you watch the conversation. It's really a fun one, so I hope you get to that. And tomorrow, great show with Rothman, and I think there's another guest tomorrow also.
Yeah, Tom Ford with the Bay. I think it's called the Bay Project.
I love it. Great, great. Looking forward to that.
And Belinda's back, so that's great.
I will jam, but I leave you in the great hands of Kim McAllister. Kim, have a great show.
Thank you.
Take us home. You're on Final Approach, baby. Go for it. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
The Mark Thompson.
Well, from Mark Thompson back, because Mark had a great conversation yesterday with author Abel, who's written a memoir of her experience with depression and how she used music and following a superstar to pull herself out of it. Tony, let's get this conversation rolling. It's really, really a good one. This is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm pretty excited about talking to this guest. She has a tremendous story. She has many stories in her, but her story of how she essentially shook a real problem with depression by connecting with Bruce Springsteen. I mean, the concerts, we can all, it's not like she had to reach him personally. Just the concert experience, the energy of Bruce Springsteen helped shake her from something that was crippling. And then beyond that, her tale is fascinating. It is all in a book. The book is High Hopes by the brilliant Abel. High Hopes, a memoir, Abel. And here she is now, Abel, everyone. Hello, ma'am.
Thank you much for this fanfare. I appreciate it.
Well, you're deserving of the fanfare. Your story is really cool, and I know it's all chronicled in the memoir, but I'd love to give people a sense of a little bit of your journey. I mean, you have this wonderful way about you and the way you communicate as a storyteller, even though I know that came to you late in life. And that's one of the things I love about your story is that it's an inspiration to all of us who may feel like, hey, our time has passed. But the reality is that's not true.
Not at all. And actually, I'm a case in point here. The transformation that began at the age of 60 or maybe 59 when I went to my first concert ever, a Bruce Springsteen concert, continues today at the age of 72. I'm 72 with 2 books, one this year, one last year. I'm 72 and I have over 700,000 followers. That's just in the last year. And I recently moved to New York City from Philadelphia and Chicago with my husband and dog. So that's all since I went on this trip at the age of 60 in 2014 and my first concert ever the year before that.
Take us to the place you were right before you took that first concert and this incredible transformation. You were kind of in a dark place, right?
I have severe recurrent depression. I had 3 regimens of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. I'd been inpatient twice. At the age of 59, I had never been to a concert. My parents didn't approve of music or fun. In 1964, when 73 million people tuned in to watch the Ed Sullivan Show and the Beatles, my mother saw me turn on the television and she said, it's a waste of time. Go to your room and do something constructive. But Labor Day weekend 2012, my son and daughter-in-law came to Philadelphia at the last minute to see a Bruce Springsteen concert. I knew nothing about the man, nothing. I mean, maybe that he was a rock star, but that's it. And I had no interest in seeing him. But a few hours before the show, I thought I'd push myself up off the couch and go because I wanted to spend time with my kids. That summer, I had undergone my 3rd regimen of ECT, and it had to be stopped because I was losing my memory. As a result, I didn't remember the July wedding of my son and daughter-in-law. But now we were walking through the stadium, through the tailgaters. They were offering us soft pretzels, beers. I mean, nothing like when we used to go for baseball games. And then we get there and they start telling me wedding stories. And then all of a sudden, the crowd mysteriously rose in unison and I rose too. And up on the giant screen was the face of a man with the biggest kind of smile I have ever seen. And my heart just opened for this man and the 40,000 people around me. And I was swaying and clapping and smiling, and I was not sitting. And this man, who at 62 was 3 years older than me, did not stop. And if he could keep doing it, so could I. And for 3+ hours, Bruce Springsteen's energy, humanity, and enthusiasm lifted me. For 3+ hours, he made me feel like I had a chance. He made me feel alive.
I mean, were the story to stop there, it might have animated you in some way, but actually that's just the beginning of the story.
Absolutely. Exactly a year later, after having one desk too many thrown at me at the Community College of Philadelphia, where I had taught for 5 years, it was the 5th week of the semester, I just walked out the door and I said, I am never coming back. But as soon as I was in my car making a U-turn headed home, I was panicking. I was terrified that with my sons grown and my husband traveling, without the structure and focus of the classroom, I'd fall back into the abyss of depression. I was not doing ECT again. The last one had been an absolute disaster. And I'm driving home and I needed a lifeline and I needed it fast. And then I remembered how hopeful and alive I felt at Springsteen concerts and that he was touring in Australia in 4 months. And I remember exactly where I was, merging onto the expressway. And I thought, I know, I'll go to Australia in February and follow the 2014 tour. Now, I have to tell you, I have to admit, I hate to travel. I hate to be alone. And remember, I hadn't known who this guy was a year earlier, but I was fighting for my life. So I went home, didn't even say hello to my dogs, didn't take off my coat, Googled travel agent Australia, wrote to the first 5 who popped up. And the next day, one of them called me and I booked the trip with her. 8 concerts, 5 cities over 26 days.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's weird because in this person who was mired in depression and in such a struggle, you see how you are a self-starter, that you're ready to push through these challenges, that you saw something in this guy who you didn't know, whose music you were, not familiar with particularly at all, and yet you made this commitment. I mean, you can see the primordial ooze of the person that you then were to flourish and become.
Thank you. And the only non-negative word either parent ever used to describe me was persevering. And I'm very disciplined, and I will do anything if I think it might help. That's why I did ECT 3 times. And that's why I committed myself into it was terrifying. I was terrified of doing these things, but if someone said it might help, a professional, I was willing to try it. And now there was this, and I was terrified of this trip. I was absolutely, people say, oh, you're going to see Bruce Springsteen, how fun. Well, first of all, I didn't really do the 3-letter F word, fun. And I still don't do it that well, and I never had done it until I went to my first Springsteen concert. But I was just going for structure and focus. And I didn't have a choice, and I wasn't going for fun. I was going for structure and focus. And I'm not the kind of person who could sit in a family room couch and say, okay, what am I going to do? Sit by myself. I would have just slid right onto the floor. I needed to get out and do. And as terrified as I was, I went.
What happened when you were on this journey? Once you get to Australia, once you start this concert tour, what happened? I mean, the logistics and then psychologically.
Well, there were 2 things. I did not go on this trip to change. As I said, I went for strength, but I came home a different person. And the kindness of strangers in Australia had a big impact on me. At home, people rolled their eyes that I was chasing this aging rock star across the world. They didn't understand, appreciate, or care that I was fighting for my life. I was embarrassed when I got on the plane to go to Australia. The flight attendant right off says, why are you coming to Australia? And I winced, and I told her, and she was wowed. And then later on, she said, oh, you're so brave. And later on, one of her colleagues came over and spoke to me about it. And in Australia, when people asked me this, many people called me courageous. Young people told me they couldn't get their mothers off the couch to go to a movie or volunteer at a church bazaar, things they had done before they retired. And each time someone said something positive to me, as disbelieving as I was, I stepped outside myself and tried to see the me these people were seeing. And then, of course, the boss had a big impact on me. I mean, his persona, for me, he just creates magic. And my heart, soul, and mind open. And I feel things, yes, that I've never felt before. And I believe we see art through the prism of our own eyes, through our own experiences. And that's how I saw him. Now, I'm not saying every song was about depression. And this is before his memoir, so I didn't know about that. But there were many songs or many things that he did on stage that just really resonated. One night he did a solo encore of Dream Baby Dream. Growing up, I'd never been allowed to dream. I never even thought about dreaming. I was so busy trying to do everything I was told to do that I never thought about what I might want to do or be. But that night, watching him sing Dream Baby Dream, the music just filled me and lifted me. And I floated out of the arena that night feeling as if I could dream it. It didn't happen right away, but I believe that once you feel something, it's easier to recreate it. And there were moments like that. Some of them were about that. Some of them were fun. One night he came out and said, it's all right to have a good time. And I heard that and I thought, it's 100% okay. It's okay for me to have fun finally after 60 years.
That was a message that you'd not ever received.
That's exactly right. Exactly. I remember the exact moment. It took me a while to learn the lyrics to the songs. And I remember when I heard those lyrics, exactly where I was. And it was, yes, it's okay for me to have fun.
When you're going concert to concert, I mean, he's a legendary performer. There are many who just go from concert to concert with the notion that they just love Springsteen so much that they, that's what they do. I mean, there are so many I'm sure that you've met and are probably still in touch with. You probably have you have a community, a social network now that you never had before. But I guess what I'm asking is just sort of a question about concerts, because you talk about them obviously he does, boilerplate stuff that people want to hear, but it sounds like each concert, actually in the case of Springsteen, is an individual event. It's not replicated concert to concert.
No, and actually it's right in front of me. One in my book, I write about on driving to my 8th and last concert. I was like, yeah, you don't expect a great baseball player to hit a grand slam or a home run every game. So he's a master performer. You don't expect, he didn't need to hit it out of the, he had done 7 really great concerts. I knew he wasn't going to come out and just do a checklist, but how many can be really great? But I'll tell you, that's the thing about Bruce Springsteen. And that's the thing about magic. You're sitting in your seat thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner that night or have for, do the next morning. And all of a sudden he appears on stage and wow, he just keeps, for me, he keeps me in the absolute moment. You're not thinking about the next moment, the past moment. You're just there with him and all the other people around you. And he has a great line that I love where he says, I can't promise you life everlasting, but I can promise you life in this moment.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Exactly what he does. And
Wow.
you just stay there with him and you're there, and you're just not you have everything you possibly want.
I want to ask you, I mean, it's so encouraging, uplifting to hear your story, and then you detail it in the book in rich ways. The question I have actually takes me back to the beginning. When you talk about these things that you were doing to try to shake depression, these things that the psychiatric community suggested, the electric stim and all of that thing, I'm curious, is that
Not stim, it's shock.
and what does it hurt? Is it painful?
For me, it wasn't, although at the end, the 3rd regimen, I ended up with what they call a typical jaw pain because they put a bite in your mouth. So when they shock you and you clench down, but it doesn't always work. It took them 3 months to figure out before I got to a doctor who knew what it was. And I was on meds for 18 months, just trying to get this pain down. So, and everybody's different. Everyone responds.
The pain you're talking about, like a TMJ pain with a jaw, is that what you're saying? Or I'm sorry.
No, it was 24/7. It didn't ever stop.
Right.
Because you just clench down and it jams the jaw.
Sure.
When I went to Australia, I was still on all the meds, and you know what? And the doctor had said to me, "You're ready to pull off, get off them anytime you are." But I was worried. But you know what happened? And this is in the book. A third of the way through the trip, I thought, you know what? I never thought I'd be able to do this trip, and look, I'm doing it. If I can do that, maybe I can wean myself off these drugs. And I started doing that while I was in Australia. It empowered me. The fact that I was doing this empowered me to do other things.
I'm just so encouraged by your story. And as I say, a lot of this just had to do with you taking control and making decisions, but then following through. And that's something that we can all get from this. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on in our last minute or two is that you also became this storyteller. I mean, you've written this memoir. That's what we're talking about, right? High Hopes, a memoir.
It started with storytelling. I ended up moving to Chicago after this trip. That was part of it. And then not only that, I now have over 700,000 followers on social media because a year ago, the publisher said, go on social media. I didn't want to do that, but I did. And now I have over 700,000 followers. So, and I'm 72. I'm a late in life author, storyteller. And I had never heard of storyteller.
Tell quickly, if you would, the story of the moth storytelling moment that you had.
We moved to Chicago. This is after the trip. My husband goes off to work. My dog Arthur comes in and I say, what are you doing? Now, I came home from Australia. I had a positive ball of energy for the first time in my life. And for the first time in my life, a story about me that I was proud of and wanted to tell. So my dog Arthur comes in and I say, what do you do when you're not walking dogs? I host a storytelling open mic. There's a string of them across the city. And I also tell stories at the Moth. I had never heard of storytelling or the Moth. I started going to these open mics in the backs of bars. I hadn't even gone to bars. And I knew I had this one story and I was hobbling around doing it. And then a friend took me to the Moth and we get there and he says, okay, now you've got to put your name in. And I don't say no. And I was terrified, never spoke on a stage or in front of a mic. And I get called as the 10th and last storyteller. And I stumbled up the stairs onto the stage and I told this 5-minute story and I won. And my parents had always told me I had nothing interesting to say. But now the community of people at the Moth were telling me something different, and it inspired me to fight through this terrible writer's block. And I wrote High Hopes. And in the meantime, I also wrote Maddie, Milo, and Me. So I have 2 books in each.
I mean, you know, it just strikes me as a triumph over a lot of messages that you got early in life that really were sadly awful, you know.
Well, TEDx has asked me to give a talk on innovation and hope. And what I realize is for a transformation, 3 things are really important: perseverance, hope, and openness. The hope helps the perseverance, makes it a little easier. And for example, if I'd gone to that first Bruce Springsteen concert, I went because I wanted to spend time with my kids. If I had just crossed my arms and said, okay, now I have to sit here for 3+ hours while this horrible music is blaring in my ears. But I didn't, you know, I was there. I took in what was coming to me. On this trip, I was counting the days down until I could come home, but I was also there. I would just be open to whatever it is you're doing and just give it a chance.
Yeah. So very, very true. Gosh, and I like, particularly as I say, as an older person, you are, you're someone who's made, you know, serious transformational change in their life. You're an I mean, really, you're an inspiration. It's said, I'm sure, said over and over to you, but because it's true, it's truly inspiring. So we'll have links to all of your works. We'll have a link to your website as well, which is on screen now, AnnAbelAuthor.com. For those who are just listening and not actually watching. And as I say, all the links will be on all the pages that contain this conversation. And wonderful story. I love your social, and I'm so delighted that we could spend time together today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great story. Ann Abel, everybody. Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Love that. And I have a lot of videos today and a lot of messages that we haven't gotten to. One of them kind of piqued my interest here. Wes writes, and thank you for the $5, Wes. I joined late. Did you talk about the question of the photos Epstein showed others of Trump in a scandalous situation? That made me do a little research. And Tony found the video today of Senator Whitehouse asking a question to Pam Bondi about these photos or alleged photos. So let's take a look at it.
Treasury compiles suspicious activity reports, referred to often as SARs, that DOJ receives automatically. Hundreds related to accounts of Jeffrey Epstein. How many of those Treasury SARs did you or Director Patel investigate?
Senator, I'm not sure if you're concerned because you took money, I believe, did you, from Reid Hoffman, one of Epstein's closest confidants, not only once, but twice in 2018 and 2024, if that's correct. But Senator, did you ask Merrick Garland any of this over the last 4 years when he sat before you? This investigation has been going on. This investigation was closed. Did you ask Alex Acosta that?
And Patel came to office, you said you would look into this. There were hundreds of suspicious activity reports. Some people would deduce from the fact that they are called suspicious activity reports that there might be suspicious activity. And yet you seem to have looked at 0 of those suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein accounts. Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from
Can
being
we pause
released.
it for a second, Tony?
Yeah, you're grilling me on.
What's interesting here is that she doesn't answer the question. She never says, no, we didn't find any salacious pictures of Trump and half-naked young women. No, there's no such thing that exists. She doesn't ever say that. She just turns it around and says, that's interesting you asked the question. What about you? So I don't know if this is a tactic that protects her from possibly lying about the information that she has uncovered or that she's seen and doesn't want to release, or if it's just a wider effort to deflect. Go ahead and hit play, Tony. Sorry about that.
President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay. Here's what we cut to something else.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Tony. Thank you, Wes, for bringing it up. And I think that it's important to note, and her deflection speaks volumes to me. So how fascinating is that? So things that are going on right now, according to reporters in Illinois, National Guard members from Texas have arrived at an Army training center in Illinois. The Associated Press saw military personnel in uniforms with the Texas National Guard at the Army Reserve Center about 50 miles from Chicago. And this comes after earlier posts from Texas Governor Greg Abbott that he posted on social media showing National Guard members from Texas boarding a plane. At that point, he didn't say exactly where they were going, but clearly it's Illinois where they have landed. So yeah, they are on the ground now, and they're at a training center, not on the streets yet, but it looks like this situation in Illinois is heating up. Unfortunately, this is where we are in America. Yeah. Want to get to some of the other super stickers that came through. Tom Graves coming in with 5. Trump is doing everything he has compelled us to hate. With a quote, "I trust Putin," from Donald Trump. Yeah. Here's the thing about Trump, Tom. He told us everything. During the run up to the election, he said, he was asked, would you turn the military against civilians, or would you use the military against civilians? He said, yeah, I'd consider that. I mean, nothing should be a surprise to us. We saw it all laid out in Project 2025. So we all knew it was coming, right? He's doing everything he's compelled us to. Chaplain Fred coming in. I am flabbergasted, he writes, on how she can keep that straight face, referring to Bondi, and continuing to lie. How in the world are Americans buying it? Why not ask about red states like Arkansas with high crime and death rates? Oh my God. Yeah, it's a means to an end for her. Wes, with the comment from earlier, and another one, the statue is 3D printed and painted. The other was destroyed by park police, but they can always make another one really easy and really cheap. There's the statue of Trump and Epstein frolicking on the National Mall. I guess just keep pumping these things out, station them all around Washington, D.C., see how long it takes for the whatever National Guard to come out and pluck them. Come on. Spencer throwing in $1.50 and another $1.50. Thank you, Spencer Jaffe. Thank you. Richard Delamater coming through with his bucket hat on and a couple bucks. You are the smartest audience in all the Shire, and I love you. Well, yeah, so kind. Thank you. Trevor Starr in Hollywood with a 1010. Mark, he writes, I don't know if you saw this, but JD Vance said he has focused too much on being vice president and not enough on his TikTok account, and that's going to change. Is that a joke? Oh my gosh, I did not see that, but that's wild. Crazy. Man. a text coming in from Rick. He, of course, doesn't understand any law, nor does he care to. He just hears a word like insurrection and assumes he knows what it means to him. How is it irony? You could say that the president accused of whipping up and stirring up an insurrection, of fomenting this January 6th crisis, is now the one saying, yeah, I think I'll go around the courts and possibly invoke the Insurrection Act. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Rick, for the comment. Thank you, everyone, for the super chats and the super stickers. And here's what we have tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show. It will be John Rothman coming through. Yes, it will. It will be Tom Ford with the Bay Foundation. Tom will join Belinda Weymouth. We will do It's the Planet Stupid. Belinda back from her travels through the Colorado area, and I believe she might have gone to Utah as well. Anyway, she'll be back. We'll talk about saving the planet and talk about the oceans and our coastline, what it looks like right now as far as pollution and how we're doing, especially here in California, but around the country. Mark, not sure if Mark will be back tomorrow, but I'll be here. And I think Albert will be here, and I hope you'll be here. The After Party Live is next. Please come on over, and Tony will have a link in the chat. Click subscribe to that. And while I have your attention, the Nikki Maduro Show is on Thursday at 5 p.m., so please join us for that as well. All the shows coming from the now defunct KGO, so we appreciate all the support.
For the Mark Thompson Show.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
All right. I'll see everyone at the after party. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.